Well, good morning, everyone. It's Matthew here from NetNative. Sorry, we're just waiting for a few people to log in, but I'm just going to go ahead and start. So, of course, if anyone wants the recording after, that will be there. You can also download the presentation after. So I'm just going to jump right in. A lot of you will probably know who we are and what we do, but it's always nice to just kind of speak about it. This presentation will focus mainly around the way that we would do things here, the way we run campaigns, the outcomes we get for some of our clients that we work with. So it's not a sales pitch. It's just simply a way to show you what's possible in the hope that your agencies or your in-house marketing team can do the same, just giving them some ideas going forward. Cool. Just want to talk about some of the key things that we want to cover. Most importantly is looking at the insights from some of the summer campaigns that we've run. So a lot of it is going to be using data from past campaigns just to look through and see what worked and what didn't work, but also kind of dig beneath the surface of what people are searching for. And then actually want to spend a little bit of time talking about conversion. So it's half the battle getting the right message to the right person, and then, of course, getting that person to give you their information and kind of start that journey from application or open day attendance to final enrollment, and then just kind of cover all that at the end about what we can take away. Cool. So one thing that I really want to focus on is looking at how universities will be talking to their students. So I think it's incredibly interesting to realize that from January to September 2016, the universities will have their Keep Warm campaigns going full steam ahead. In February, for example, there'll be plenty of university applicant days and things like that, where they'll have applicants who will actually come into the university, and their Keep Warm campaigns will start a lot earlier than colleges normally would. So I think it's incredibly important to bear this in mind, that you will want to start keeping those applicants warm as early as possible. I think that's just incredibly vital. So you drift from January into February, where UCAS Extra begins. So that's essentially if students haven't used all their offers or received 5 offers, they can still apply. So it's sometimes interesting to perhaps put that kind of messaging out there, have these leading questions, because even if it's 1 or 2 extra applications, it's still worthwhile. It's still worth getting, getting those students to come in. I've then also mentioned in March how art and design courses, that's when the applications close. So I'm sure you'd be very interested to know that from January into March, people can change their minds about what they want to study. Perhaps studying an art foundation degree is now something that is more serious for them. So just understanding that this is a time when you can actually, again, get more applications coming in. From April to May, that's when people are really starting to form their decisions, and they know where they want to go. They're just waiting for their grades, and they're just finishing their exams. So just bearing that in mind, what the students are doing, if they are concerned about that, if they do get worried about their grades, or if they can make it into the university of their choice, you can always let them know that there's always an option with you on a wide variety of courses. Of course, in June, there's the UCAS Extra again, so that's when clearing actually starts. So it starts in June. So even though I've included it from July to September, you want to start thinking about that as early as June. And then, of course, from July to September, that's when people are really starting to make their decisions. So from July into August, you want to keep them engaged with what you're putting out. So you want to keep them highly engaged. You want to make sure that you just have that constant communication with them. And then, of course, in August and September, that's when people are really going to start to make their decisions if they didn't get the grades they wanted to, which for a lot of colleges is where the bulk of their applications will come. So it's about having everything set up properly, all the case studies, all the content out there, everything completely ready to go in the run-up to August enrollment, even going into September, because people will still switch, they'll still decide to come in late. So it's just a really quick glimpse of the kinds of things that we would expect you to be doing to keep abreast with what universities are doing at the minimum. Cool. Of course, being a digital marketing agency, the focus of this will be on digital. Offline media will have a place, but it's also about how we can take that and make sure we know what works. So it's about being able to track inquiries or some kind of conversion or at least an outcome from everything that you do. And that's why we focus on digital, because it's so easy and effective to track these outcomes from the campaigns we run. So this is how we would advertise. These are all the different platforms that we're actually able to work on. You will know a lot of these, but whether or not you have active presences on them is yet to be determined. So for example, I know a lot of colleges aren't necessarily using Instagram to push and promote HE courses as much as they would want to, or Twitter in that respect. And a lot of it on Facebook can be kind of jumbled into one big post. But what you really want to do is have every single platform working with each other. So have the Facebook activity about raising awareness, supporting those active users on Google search, for example. Even looking at paid audio. So a lot of colleges will still run radio campaigns, and they'll spend a lot of time and money on radio campaigns. It can, again, be difficult to prove any kind of conversion from that. It's great for brand awareness. It can be great for getting people to events, but what's the outcome? So if you are going to be doing anything offline, and we've included that, outdoor media is always going to have a place. You want to have really unique phone numbers on it, for example. So if someone calls in, you can register the fact that is, that came from that source. Alternatively, if you have any kind of offline or print things, you want to have unique hashtags or unique search terms on there, so that way if someone searches for it, you can find that out, and you can kind of track that, again, trying to tie up everything together, which is why it's all about strategy and about planning things in. Cool. Just wanted to run you through some of the specific platform things, showing you how we reach out to these people, what we do. Now I want to drill down a little bit beneath the surface and look at what types of things people are searching for. And this is where we can start to draw a lot of information about how you can actually compete with universities. So what we did is we wanted to represent what people are searching for throughout the years. From January to September, we wanted to look at the fluctuation in access to higher education searches, which the majority of people are still searching for, so it's really interesting to bear this in mind. Foundation and higher education courses, people aren't always searching for them, especially in an FE context. They're not searching for these courses on an FE college's website, so it's really important to bear that in mind. Whereas access to higher education, people are going to FE colleges to study for that. So it's interesting to look how this can tie in to the monthly topic mentions. So what this means is we've then taken the same foundation access and actual degree level courses. When are people mentioning them in relation to an FE college? So from January to October is when we wanted to look. It's interesting because you can see the mentions are, of course, incredibly low. As time goes on, people get maybe more anxious, more concerned, more active in asking questions, posting on social media, posting links and questions on forums, doing all these types of things to find answers. And then, of course, from July, August, and September, right in the middle of clearing, right when people are really nervous about what's the outcome's going to be, they are posting. This is, of course, across a wide range of things. So it's really interesting to note, during clearing, we see an upshoot in people actually mentioning these things. So ironically, foundation degrees in January go from nobody mentioning them and nobody searching for them to all the way in July and August, the most mentioned thing. Again, I think it comes into the fact that people don't know what they are potentially. They're not aware of what a foundation degree is. They're not aware that they can do one at a local college. So it's really important to balance the active users who are searching for access to higher education courses with the people who are a little bit more passive, who are searching for foundation and higher education courses. So it's about really utilizing this information to see which audiences do I need to target and how can I segment that. So we then want to break this down and actually look at what people are searching for. So it's not just generally foundation degrees, but it's looking at what, breaking that down a little bit. It's really interesting to look at 1 in 4 people are searching for what a foundation degree is. So that just kind of screams the fact that we need to completely, plaster that all over the local area. So anyone in a 10 or 15 mile radius knows that you do offer those courses, that there is that option to study a foundation degree there, and also what it is, because it can be quite confusing, especially if you're coming back to education. You're not sure what it is. Also, this is a national average, because as we'll see, the number of searches that come from London itself can really skew the entire all the figures. So if you were interested in how it was impacted kind of locally in your area, I'd be more than happy to get the stats for you after. It would just have to be, you just have to let me know what area you're interested in, and I can provide those. Otherwise it can be a little bit jumbled. Going back to this, it's also very interesting, I think, to look at the course specific aspects of this. So there are certain people, if we think almost 60% of the searches for foundation degrees are really specific. So it's what people, people are searching for specific courses to do a foundation degree. And when you contrast this to how low the actual number of searches are that an FE college would receive, I think it's really interesting to see how we can raise awareness that colleges do offer these foundation degrees. If someone is searching for an art foundation degree or a foundation degree in nursing, they're ready to make a decision. If they're done on a computer, which 51% of people are, they're a lot more likely to inquire or apply. So it's really crucial to just raise awareness of the fact that people can study that degree here. They already know what they want, so it's about making sure they find you before other colleges, essentially, or universities. Great. Going back to access courses. So I think this is very interesting because of the breakdown by device. So I'm going to start there, actually. What we see here is 64% of people are actually searching for these courses on a computer. Now, I would like to say that potentially means we're looking at a much older audience. So if someone, we typically find that young people are highly active on mobile devices, whereas perhaps an older audience are sitting down on desktop computers more. So it might be interesting to really, dig beneath that surface a little bit and see what's going on there. Whether or not the average age of your access course student is is a little bit older, but just judging from this, I think we can look at that. Alternatively, looking at the key search terms on Google, looking at how general it is. So almost 30% of all searches for this are about access courses in general. So people aren't necessarily aware, again, of the options within that. They might know they can do an access course, but they don't know the details. They don't know what is possible. They're just not aware of everything that you can do. Alternatively, the access to nursing, one of the people are searching for that. There's so much activity around this. People are highly aware of that. So it is really interesting to see how you can take advantage of this. Looking at the actual searches that are going on throughout the year. So this diagram looks at higher education course searches that are searched for by FE college potential students. So that is FE, people searching for higher education courses and then going on to further education college websites. This is where we start to see the really direct competition with universities. So it can be a little bit difficult to actually compete on here. What we see is people are still searching for college courses in relation to HE courses. So that means people actually searching how they can stay in a college to do a higher education course. So there is a search activity for it. And if you're not having that presence on Google search, if you're not actively taking advantage of all those active users who are coming onto your website, then as you can see here, you can really miss a trick there. So it's really important to make sure you have that activity for all these active users who know what they want and are coming through. Alternatively, you have people searching for university courses. Again, very general. So at this stage, people are just not necessarily aware of what's going on. So again, it's about using the different platforms to make sure we're getting the active users who know what they want, but also making sure that those people who are unsure or unaware of the options, that they get all the information they need. So it's about getting the right messages to the right people. Leading questions. Did you know you can, study? You can stay on at your college and study a course. These types of things. Just making it really clear for potential students. I'm also interested to note, there are some teaching courses. So if you say 1 in 10 searches comes from teaching, I wonder if that. I know a lot of colleges will be offering teaching qualifications. I wonder if that's a kind of niche course where you can try and obtain more students, just because the nature of what you offer is going to be a lot smaller, more attentive. Again, going forward, just these kinds of things that you can think about. Also, looking at the breakdown by device, I think you can make the argument this is potentially a younger audience because they're embracing mobile technology a little bit more. Less searches coming from desktop computers and a lot more coming from mobile and tablet devices. You could make the argument that, with 54% of everything coming from a mobile or a tablet device, it is potentially a younger audience that you're engaging with. So if you do have any questions at this time, please feel free to ask them. I think there's the ability to do that. I'll stop every now and again and see if there are any. There's none yet, but please feel free to ask any questions if anything's unclear to you. So we just spent a little bit of time looking at search patterns and search behaviors. Again, really important because those are the active users. People know they want to study an access course in nursing, so they search for it, and they're ready to make that decision. So it's so important that you're aware that that's how people are going to be getting their information. And of course, coming onto your website, making sure the landing pages are set up properly. So having all that information, I think, going forward, can allow you to see, where budget should go, frankly. So being able to manage that budget, what keywords should I be looking at, and actually, trying to compete as much as you can with universities, because you could never do it on a budget point of view. But what you can do is just be smart and bid on the right things and make sure your offer is incredibly by when compared to universities. So I just covered a lot of Google search stuff. I now want to cover some of the social aspects of it. By social, we mean, Facebook, Google, Twitter, these kinds of platforms where there's a lot of social content people are sharing and posting images. So where we want to start is actually looking at Instagram. So this is an example of Cornwall College using Instagram to promote their HE courses. This is right, well, I can't actually see the date on there, looking at when, I think the image on the left is really clear. It's clear imagery. There's the marsupial on his shoulder. He's very happy. And of course, there's that really nice quote from there. Excuse me, this is what all colleges should be doing. They should have this content ready to go just because it's so effective at really showing off these images. And this is just unique for higher education. So this, of course, you can see all the tags that they use at the bottom. Alternatively, we also see, posting out that you're an event and just showing that. That's a nice way to get engagement. What I now want to do is compare this to universities, just to show you what you're up against. So these are just quick examples of what universities are doing on Instagram. You look at actually the quality of the content is much better than an FE college. These are the top performing posts from these social media platforms. So, obviously it's very straightforward. This doesn't necessarily tell you anything about the University of Glasgow on the left, but it's a very engaging picture, obviously. It's a really nice way to show off the city and show off the campus. And that's, I think, the distinction. You have to make different platforms really clear in what they offer. You have to engage students, and that's the important thing. It can't be serious all the time. You have to put the content out there that is high enough quality to get people to engage and think of your brand and think of you as, a provider of higher education. In the same vein, you have the University of Nottingham, showing off its part of the campus. So again, taking really high quality content and placing it on here. Now, of course, for HE, you can make that in an HE context. I'm sure there's tons and tons of activity going on at the college around HE degrees and HE courses. So it's about capturing that content in a very high quality and putting it online. This isn't to say that FE colleges can't use Instagram. We've run very successful campaigns with colleges in London through the summer to engage with FE students. That's where we saw a lot of success, and they used a similar template as this, so just high quality images around the campus, just showing it off. So it is possible, but you really want to make sure that content is fine-tuned. We then looked at how colleges are using Twitter. So this is a way to announce things. It's a really short burst of messages that can go out. I don't need to go into loads of detail about that. being brutally honest, these ads, they're kind of bland. They don't necessarily say much. They don't necessarily show anything off about the college. They're right in the middle of clear, and the one on the left is the 13th of August, and the one on the right's 12th, right when people are thinking about the results. But they were the top performing HE posts on Twitter. So it shows that colleges were not using that platform effectively at all. One great example is it shows call us ... and ask them to go to the website. They should be able to. You should have it click to call through this. The majority of people will click to call from a mobile phone, so they will make that journey from seeing an ad and clicking directly from their phone rather than clicking through to the website, having to find the number. It has to be as easy as possible for them to do that. Also, really need to use better hashtags. So offering hashtag bachelor degrees, hashtag foundation degrees, it's kind of spammy. No one would click on that, and hardly anyone retweeted it. So it's really, really important to bear these things in mind. It's also incredibly different when you compare this to the HE side of things. You can already see they have images in there in the first place, something to look at. That's what people want. They want images. Text just gets skimmed past. They'll read it, but it doesn't necessarily register. In this case, these celebrities, and I know FE colleges make a big push to get celebrities to come in. This isn't to say having Harry Styles come to your college will recruit more HE students, but it is about having that kind of fun and engaging content. You can already see none of these Twitter posts talked about apply now or BA degrees or MA degrees. It is just in a way to engage people, and that's why we get the retweets. And now this content will be seen everywhere. In the University of Edinburgh, we'll have a much stronger profile online because people like the content that they put out there. It's just really interesting to show the difference, and this is what colleges are up against. And it's just really, really important to be able to benchmark that. You can compete with the universities, and this is what they're doing. It's just about having that quality content and making it engaging for people. We then also wanted to look at what colleges are doing, what universities are doing on Facebook. Again, I think one constant theme throughout this is just really high quality images that people want to look at. There's a lot more going on here than any other HE Facebook post that goes on there for FE colleges. Again, using actually the same gentleman that was on the previous page. Of course, he's here now. So using is the most engaging content you can, but not necessarily making it just about recruitment and applications and some of that stuff. You have to really engage with people. That being said, there's still room for brand awareness and talking about relevant things that are going on and options for courses, but it has to be at the right time. It has to be when people are still in that kind of exploratory stage. One incredibly important aspect is looking at mature students. So actually grab this example from a university. I know a lot of colleges will be segmenting that audience between mature students and younger students, but if you're not, it's so important to do that. Different creative automatically has to be used. You don't necessarily want a bunch of you don't want tons of pictures of 18 and 19-year-olds to attract people who are maybe a little bit older, who are coming back into education. It's incredibly important to bear that in mind. Looking at the financial support aspect of that. So more and more universities are able to offer bursaries to students, especially if they're from a widening participation background. So i.e. their household incomes below a certain level and they don't have a parent who attended university or anyone else in their family. Whether or not colleges can offer any kind of financial incentives, I'm not sure, but it can help for full-time study, and I know that's where the majority of colleges want to recruit from. So it's about segmenting that audience really clearly, asking the kinds of questions there, but also getting information from people. As you can see here, we pulled some examples of the questions that we asked people from: first name, surname, emails, postcodes, and household incomes, and all these really sensitive questions. We then asked them further questions on the secondary form, which allowed people to fill in what their biggest obstacle you face when thinking about going to university. That's invaluable data for marketing teams to be able to see what objections are coming out, what problems people are having, and there's absolutely no reason why a college couldn't be doing the same thing. I then also wanted to look at the different creatives for colleges that are used to engage with HE students. So what we see here is a wide range of things. It's colorful, and there's tons and tons of information going on. There's one animated GIF, which is good to see. It's kind of light colors and everything like that. But it gets the message across to a degree, more about the institution itself and not actually the degrees, I think. So this is just a kind of snapshot of what colleges are doing across the country. We then contrast that with universities. Automatically, I personally think they look more professional. Perhaps they have much stronger USPs. They have much stronger kind of creative concepts behind them. You can see, Teesside University, the little animated, parts about, different where their students go and stuff like that. Just a little bit more engaging, a little bit more likely to draw someone's attention, as opposed to some of the ads here, which might come across as just not as professional. And this is during clearing, when you're remarketing to people, or when you're running display ads, or when you're having this creative anywhere else, this is what someone will see. And they might see the same ad, and going to the University of East London is no different than going to an FE college in London to do a degree. It's also the kind of the same level. Same thing with University of West of England or Teesside, all these universities almost. Colleges still can't compete with them. So it's important to just bear that in mind. This is the creative content that's being shown. Cool. So I'm just going to check if there's any questions. If you bear with me 2 seconds. Nope. All right. Fantastic. So the next aspect that we want to focus on is how we can convert these people, and looking at kind of conversion strategies from the summer and previously. So I just spent the last kind of 15 to 20 minutes talking about how you can get these people onto your website, the right ways to do that, what they're searching for, the right kind of content, but that's half the battle. The next half is making sure that they actually apply and that they subsequently enroll. Great. So this is the conversion funnel that we like to use. We like to be really, really aware of the different stages people go through to actually make their decision. So what we see here is this process from first stage awareness. So that's seeing a display ad for higher education courses somewhere, or a Spotify ad about the HE Open Day coming up, which we actually always think should be specific. We argue you should have specific open days for HE, not clump them together. Just kind of something you can think about going forward. Again, any display advertising, anything in the newspaper, just to raise awareness about that. Once they've come onto your website, they've shown an interest, they've clicked on something and realized, okay, I want to learn a lot more about this. What we can then do is gather information about them. So they're looking around. They'll then go from your website. They might go to a university's website, another college's website. We want to know that information about the user. We then want to take that information and show a really tailored ad to them by either using programmatic, so that's act-alike, so we can show it to them and people who are like them. Or alternatively, if they come onto your website, this is when we ideally get inquiries from them. So this is when they give you their information, email address, what course they're thinking about studying, when they want to study, and any other information that you need. So that's how we can start to get the prospects coming through. Once we have those, we then want to keep using it. So this is when we want to start contacting them, emails, even phone calls. I've seen some colleges have contact teams, which can be really effective to just give that person a call. When looking online, there's still plenty of ways to do that, from programmatic to, again, using all this information to create an incredibly niche audience of people who you know are looking. Paid social and paid search, again, just to bolster that, the number of inquiries you're getting coming through. Social to engage that passive audience, search, again, to get the kind of active audience. And then ultimately people are still searching again later on. And then we want them to convert. So throughout this entire process, we want to see where the inquiry is coming from, where the effective campaign is coming from. So the way we like to do this is having different tracking methods. So UTM tracking, so we can actually track the source or keyword source of the leads that have come in. So if we run multiple Facebook campaigns or have multiple sets of ads, as we always like to do, you can see which individual one generated that inquiry. The reason we want to do this is you, as a college, don't have unlimited budgets, and they're shrinking. So you have to be able to see where is the outcome. And if you can't directly attribute something to a lead, it's difficult to justify continuing to do it. So it's really, really vital to always have that outcome at the end of it. Alternatively, you can see what messages actually work. So it's incredibly, incredibly important to do that. So that's one aspect of tracking. The other one that we want to look at is call tracking. So if someone actually calls in, we want to be able to see where that came from, and we want to be able to identify the source of that. This is how we can start to tie in offline things. And it allows a far greater understanding of what works and what doesn't work. By placing unique numbers on different platforms, we're able to see everything that works. And then going forward, you can, of course, fine-tune all that. Another important aspect is even getting goal tracking involved. So through analytics, we can actually place goals on your website. So this might be someone clicking through to the UCAS application page. So it's difficult to track direct applications, well, actually almost impossible to track direct applications, but that's something that you can still do. Did someone click apply through UCAS? Did someone order a prospectus? Did someone register for an open event? You can have all of these goals on your website, and then once they're completed, that person will no longer see that ad. So you can have a really, really sophisticated way of coming in and actually finding out what people are doing, if they're doing it, and where they came from to do that. So you can actually see, great, I know that the display campaign I ran, for example, helped me generate 10 people going through the UCAS page and potentially applying. I then saw that we had an additional 5 applications come in. Or alternatively, I saw that someone came in and 50 people registered for the open event. At the event, 30 of those turned up, 10 of those applied. Having those metrics is so, so important, so you can start to identify eventually enrolled students, which is what the final outcome, to impressions. That's the whole user journey that we really want to start tying up for people. Another really interesting thing that I don't think people are aware of is where they're being spoken about. So this is essentially what we've done. We looked at sentiment analysis. So we've been able to scan, we trawl the web, trawl a lot of the internet to be able to find where FE colleges are being spoken about. So this is where people are speaking about HE and FE, and these are the things they're saying. These are the positive experience they've had. Access degrees, university, all these terms here will make up, the USPs and why someone would want to come and study here. You then also look at where these mentions came from. It's interesting to notice a lot of them came from forums. So this is any message board dealing with education. The biggest one's probably the student rooms, but there's going to be others like that. Now, universities, I know, will have people, will have kind of brand ambassadors and student ambassadors patrolling these and having a presence on there to answer questions, to talk to people, and to guide people through the process. I don't think colleges do that, but this is where you're still being spoken about. Same thing with, kind of mainstream. So that includes kind of, newspapers and things like that. So people actually posting comments online on newspaper websites. So it's really, really interesting just to bear all this in mind. It's nice to see that there's still a lot of positive things going on, and generally the conversation is incredibly, incredibly positive. Alternatively, we also see that there are negative aspects of this. Granted, they are still vocal, but thankfully there are less mentions maybe. But again, just as it's all well and good to have good things said about you, if you're unaware that people are actually saying negative things, that can almost be just as bad. So again, having people present on these areas to kind of fill in and actually kind of answer some of these questions, especially some of the key terms that are used are actually quite difficult, or quite serious. Looking at people who have anxiety or even depression in some cases, if people are talking about these things, you want to be able to at least speak to that person and make sure that they have everything they need and try and reassure them in some way, shape, or form. And of course, this is all about conversion. These people would have inquired and applied, and they're still going to be having that conversation. They're still going to be thinking about it, and seeing these things can sometimes influence people to apply or not enroll or withdraw their application and go somewhere else. So it's all a part of the conversion period, which is why I included it in this part. We also then broke this down just to see where the conversation was happening. So this is overall mentions of everything, and you can still see that forums, really, really kind of specialist forums where people are going to just talk about education stuff. That's where the majority of it, because it is that serious conversation. You can have that serious conversation that's anonymous. So it's a really, really important thing to bear in mind. If you haven't thought about that, if you haven't been aware of where it's being spoken about on these kind of student-based forums, you really want to go do that. Social media is fairly straightforward. I know a lot of colleges will patrol, I keep using the word patrol, will engage with questions and comments on social media fairly regularly, so that's no surprise. But you just look at the scale compared to the front forums to social media aspects. It just, I think, highlights that even more. And then looking at also kind of regional newspapers, again, this is where the kind of top mentions are coming in. So all of this stuff, all the tagging, all the tracking, and different platforms at different times of the year, what you want to be able to do is at the end of the campaigns or at the end of the recruitment process say, great, we enrolled 50 students. From those 50 students, you want to work back. Great, for 50 students, we got, it could be anywhere, an X amount of applications. And I use the example here, you get 10 enrollments, 100 applications, so 10% conversion rate. This is just an example. What we then want to do is be able to find inquiries to applications. And I think this is where colleges really, really struggle with inquiry management, which is why I've spent so much time talking about it. I don't know many colleges that I speak to or work with that can unequivocally tell me this is how many inquiries you need for an application. But you want to be at that stage, because that's one of the best indicators of a campaign. If you can't get people to apply, that's one of the best ways to see, is my messaging working? Is the content that I'm putting out there effective? So being able to generate the inquiries and manage them is incredibly, incredibly important. And seeing how many of those go on to apply. This even goes further because it's not always a marketing issue. It's sometimes a structural organizational issue. If the admissions and HE team don't work with marketing, that can cause a lot of problems. I fully appreciate that, which is why it's sometimes good to have that very strategic overview and really look at things in that way. Alternatively, or in addition to that, we then want to be able to attribute how many clicks we want for an inquiry. That's never a science, but it should be a barometer for you. So if you're running campaigns in-house, you see, great, we got 1,000 clicks, for example, and we generated 10 leads from that. And that's generally what we need. So it's 100 clicks for a lead or something like that. You want to have that in place. So that way in the future, you know what activity is performing the best. That will differ from platforms. So Google search will generate more inquiries for a smaller amount of clicks. Facebook's a different way. There are different metrics for different platforms, but that's important because you're spending money reaching out to these people, and if you have no idea what's working the best or when things, what kind of expectations you should have, then you're not doing everything that you can, and you can't compete with the universities on budget. So you need to know exactly what you're doing that's most effective and do that the most to try and get more students coming in. We've been working with colleges where we've been able to help track enrollments from campaigns, and we always want to help people kind of have this attribution model in place. And then, of course, being able to establish costs alongside this so you have benchmarks. And that's, frankly, where universities are really, really good, is using information from past campaigns and refining that. Sometimes I don't think colleges have the time to really drill down into issues like this and really see what's working for me, how can I improve it next year, because they're so busy fighting fires. But this is the kind of structure that we really, really want to have in place. Another aspect of this is using BigTops. So this is now a free tool that any college can use to help generate these inquiries. It's worked with dozens and dozens of colleges across the country. You can see how easy it is to read, how easy the form is to create. Now this can be embedded in a wide range of places. You can also place this on your website, on the homepage, embed it as a smaller form, so all inquiries can be sent through to the same system. So you can start to centralize where they come from as opposed to having an incoming email or a phone call or an open day question. You can try and centralize all that. you can easily create fields to ask people more questions and have a really, really clear idea of what works. We've used this with kind of dozens of colleges across the country for higher education courses, and it's been really, really effective because we've been able to help, prove what works, improve the outcome of any campaigns that we run. And this is with just an example of University Center Croydon. So just being able to show the work they did. We then also kind of look at University Center Bury, so right outside on the outskirts of Manchester. Again, different form, but you can still see what goes on behind it. There's a whole list of courses behind it that people can click through and actually go and speak to. And this is now a free tool for people to use, and we find that it's really helpful to prove the way that campaigns work. So there's tracking built into it, so you can just place pixels in the back end of it. We know college websites can sometimes be very difficult to navigate with different CRMs and kind of CMS systems. It can sometimes be a real nightmare to have clear tracking. So using BigTalk is sometimes a stopgap to that. But alternatively, even on its own, it's still a really useful product. So if there's no way that you can actually register inquiries from digital campaigns, that's something you can use automatically, especially in the run-up to January when the UCAS application closes, and that's where search volumes really, really spike. You really want to take advantage of that. So one final thing is I actually grabbed a call tracking report from a university just to show what is possible. I know during the summer, colleges will get tons and tons of phone calls coming in, but you might be unsure how many were answered. You are unsure what time of day they came in. So you might miss phone calls between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning when we still saw some come in. Alternatively, you might miss some a bit later on. Or if you weren't aware of the volume of calls, you might miss them during the day because there weren't enough staff there. And then again, going into everything I was saying before about unique numbers, you can even have kind of personalized numbers for people. So if someone comes on your website, that IP address has a unique number registered to it, so you can see if that person's come on and called multiple times. Again, there's just so much that you can do to track and see what works. So this graph here compares the overall call source from print, referrals, social, search, direct, nationally as kind of an average to the University of Westminster. So there's a really mixed bag in here because in some instances the campaigns generated tons more calls. So the search campaign, for example, 50% almost of all their calls came directly from that. So that was people searching for something and actually clicking to call directly from the ad. And that was the user journey, of course, which is all on their mobile. Alternatively, we had people calling direct. So that was just entering in the phone number manually. That could have been because they were on a course page, saw that, and dialed it and called immediately. Social, we still had calls directly, so people clicking the call from social media. But I bet that was mostly a way to get people through to the website where they could then call. Again, having all this information means next year, going forward, you know what to do. You can understand the user journey of a student during clearing, and you can maximize really the number of phone calls that you can manage effectively. I've only taken a few pages from this, but one thing I thought was interesting to add was looking at the source. So what that means is, of course, where these calls were coming in from. So what I think is very interesting is if 60% of all phone calls are coming from mobile, and if you look at the age range that we're trying to target, so clearing students, perhaps people are hesitant about calling because things due to credit, and if they're going to stay on the line for 5 minutes and eat up all their credit and have to top it more, that's a concern when they're really stressed out right now. That's maybe not the best thing. So one thing that I think more colleges should do is have a inquiry form where they can request a callback. That way, any digital activity during the summer has a more relevant call to action. Request a callback now. So that way, through the month of clearing, if you get 100 inquiries requesting a callback during the month of clearing, that you can then call and try and obviously get them onto a course because they're calling you, that's an incredible way to manage that process as opposed to having people kind of call in and stuff like that we might be hesitant to. Still shows 60% of calls coming from mobile devices. Really, really interesting. That's where that's how people are viewing the content. So they're checking their emails, getting their grades, worrying, searching, and calling, all from their phone. still get people coming in from landlines. Is that parents? Is that people at home? It still shows that. International, again, is a really small number. So for a university going forward, that's good to know. How can they get more people coming in from clearing internationally? How different is that user journey, and what more can they do? This is where, again, I said universities can be really superior to colleges in some way because they are really good at reviewing what's going on and improving on it next year, whereas unfortunately colleges are sometimes playing catch up. We then also look at kind of the overall kind of landing pages by types, clearing sections. So that's of course course specific. That's the majority of where people went. That makes sense. It's all course specific. Clearing section. I was getting confused. The clearing section. So obviously at this time of year, clearing is the most important thing, and that's where people will go, with more than half the people going directly onto that page, with a good proportion then going to the actual course specific things. Pardon me. So if you're thinking close to 75, more than 75% of people are going to be on those two pages, do you have specialist web pages set up during clearing that are optimized for mobile phones in that period? Again, understanding the user journey of someone seeing something and then calling, you want to make it as easy as possible for them. So having all this information is incredibly vital. Cool. Another thing that we want to be doing is having a much clearer audience. So we have actually developed something called Active Engine. Now what this allows you to do is we place code on your website, and what it does is it takes loads of information about your audience. So some of the most effective campaigns that we run are remarketing campaigns, so targeting people based on their IP addresses who have previously visited the college, and email addresses. It's all first-party data. What that shows is first-party data, email addresses, IP addresses, anything, are really, really important. So we want to do more with that. So we decided we're going to create this tag that actually collects information about a user and where they go after. So it looks at the active data, where they're going, what they're doing, all the active choices they make, and then there's the more passive data. So things that just, not the active things, so looking at, the behaviors of people, the income, where they are in the decision-making process. There's so much information that we can create from a user, with the ultimate goal is to create a highly, highly relevant group of people. What we then do is place this into the data processing and the actual platforms we use. So we create the audience, and that's when we use Facebook and Google to actually create that. And then, of course, we can segment that audience and then find people who are like those people. And throughout the entire time, we're constantly improving this. And once we have a clear idea of who the audience is, that then goes out onto the platforms and to the users. They then decide to click on it or they don't, and then they make the act. They convert on the page or they don't, and we constantly feedback and improve this. So being able to see essentially things like this. So we can see, this is just a kind of example of what the dashboard would look like. 29 million people engaged, with 16,000 actually viewing the course pages, seeing who considered inquiring, who actually inquired, looking at that drop-off, how we can improve that, and then the same thing with actual applications. Ultimately, what this aims to do is create a much tighter audience that's a lot more relevant, because that means you will have, that would be the best way for you to reach out to that audience. You might not have the money to cover everyone in the country, but what you can do is use these tools to actually create a really, really relevant audience. So you can take a smaller amount of money, target a smaller amount of people, but they're a lot more relevant. Just to wrap things up, I thought it'd be interesting to look at HE in FE in a wider context, and frankly, looking at some of the strongest USPs I think colleges have. This may not be any surprise to you, but I know some people used it. There are some different USPs, and these are some of the ones that we find the most effective. It is fairly straightforward. I think small class sizes is probably the best one for returning students or students who need more attention. Having that one-on-one personal help is a lot better. Is a lot more effective for their education. Even things like new facilities. I'm always amazed how new and modern the FE college facilities are when compared to some universities. So that's always something to bear in mind going forward. Ultimately, costs. will come down to it. It will cost less to study in FE College. The course fees are lower. Also, you can potentially stay at home, or at least in your local area, where you can maintain your living arrangements, be with your family, or if you have a family yourself, being able to stick around with them and have flexible working hours. There's tons of things. So hopefully these are all very familiar with you, and you're constantly talking to people about this, because this is really the key aspects that you want to promote. So that was a lot of information to cover. I fully appreciate that in about 50 minutes or so. That's all I have to say here. As always, if you had any particular questions, I know it was great to see some questions coming out from the actual inquiries. No one's asked anything here. My email address is there, my phone number is there. I'm more than happy to walk you through anything on kind of a one-on-one basis if it was unclear, or if you want more specific information for your area, just please contact us. We can get that over to you, just to help you going forward over the next 6 to 9 months. Well, thanks for your time.